TMI Monday, and today we're looking at the culture of impunity and its impact on governance and development. Well, when I started the show this morning, I gave you a typical example of Ecuador that had this culture of impunity as it relates to time management, where it was a national norm that events don't start on time. And so that went on for years and was impacting on the governance and even the GDP. Recently, there's been a phenomenal rise of the GDP from about $24 billion to over $69 billion as a result of a national orientation that tends to focus on strict adherence to time. If an event is built for 8 o'clock, it starts 8 o'clock. But what's it about a culture of impunity? What is impunity in itself? Because in our political space, in the social space, legislative space, social cultural space, you just name it, economic space, this seems to be something that is synonymous with us back here. Some say, particularly with time, that one of Africa's biggest challenge is to be able to deal with time if we must move forward as a continent and as a people. Joining me now, I have Pastor Collins O'Connor. Pastor Collins, many thanks for joining us on the program.
Thank you for inviting me.
I also have with us here a civil activist, Executive Director, Freedom of Information Council, Barrister Prest Agbohan. Barrister Prest, many thanks for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, I'm expecting two more guests to join the discussion, Osaro Bizugbe and Fred Uyigwe. I'm sure they're underway here. Gentlemen, let's start from the business. Let me start with you, Barrister Prest. What's your understanding of impunity, as it were, before we talk about the culture of impunity?
Impunity is actually the value that stimulates indifference to regulation, to policies, to law, to standard, without consequence. You look at the lines of the definition, it means that anything can happen without any repercussion. Nobody is expected to be sanctioned. Nobody will query you, and there's still no standard even set at all on any paper, even orally. So you can behave the way you want to behave, you can do anything you want to do, and you go away with it. And advanced impunity, 21st century, is that there's a law, there's a regulation, and you do away with it, you overturn it, you override it, you discard it, and you go away with it. Maybe by virtue of your position, by virtue of your political party, by virtue of your personality, or maybe be by virtue of your family background.
Interesting. Pastor Collins, you want to build on that?
Oh yeah, when we talk about impunity, it's a situation where there are laws, but people run against those laws. There's a rule of law. The people abrogate by reason of their actions these laws, this rule of law, and they get away with it. And the reason why the culture festers is more because people do it and get away with it. And especially where it is the case that law enforcers. The problem, the reason why impunity will persist is because law enforcers turn a blind eye to lawbreakers. All right, when people break law and the laws are not raised against them, then the culture of impunity will persist. People do things and know that there will be no consequence. All right, in the places where you do not have impunity, there are places where they know that if you do the crime, you will do the time. But here we know that if you do the crime, there are 99% chances that you will get away with it, depending on who you are.
Interesting. Interesting. Very sound background to this discussion. I'm just hoping that our other two panelists, Osaro Bizugbe and Fred Uyigwe, will be here on time for us to take this discussion further. Well, let me come to Barrister Agbohan. From the definitions and explanations given, it means that we do things without bearing in mind that there is a consequence. Is this peculiar to the average Nigerian, or is peculiar to those who have found themselves in position of authority?
I think it's not peculiar to Nigeria. It's not even peculiar to those who are in authority. It is an institutional thing. Firstly, you have legislations that themselves are fighting themselves. I don't mean legislators now. I mean the laws in themselves are not at peace with themselves because of the kind of persons who go to a lawmaking institution. So this institution has been badly damaged, not necessarily by our historical past of militarism, but because of the level of people who decide to go to legislative house of government, not just the executive now. So those who make the laws are there. People do not even know the laws that are available. Cartel try to muzzle up power to send people into the National Assembly to secure their interests. There are a lot of persons in National Assembly from certain part of the country that are in National Assembly to break the petroleum industry into so many segments. They were sponsored from the day one by the oil sector to those places to go and secure their interests. So the impunity starts with the institution. This institution has been so badly damaged. And a major institution that can actually secure impunity or reduce it to a level where people can comply to the law is actually the legislative arm and the judiciary, not necessarily the executive, because it is assumed and presumed that the executive will overstep their boundary. The legislature will make law to regulate them, and the judiciary will interpret it to regulate them. But in a case where the institution has been so badly destroyed, from the executive, legislature to the judiciary, where does the average man live? So there is high level of impunity at governance level because the institution has been badly damaged, not necessarily because of the average man on the street who does not even know the meaning and the consequence of impunity.
We also have joining us Fred Uyigwe. Fred, many thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, Professor Collins, I was going to come to you. Would you say those in government has really raised the bar in this debate around the culture of impunity?
Oh yeah, if government was not involved in the various acts of impunity, then we will not be talking about it as something that has developed as a culture. All right, because government sets the pace, and you will find that at various levels, for instance, you will find that when there is a traffic build-up, all right, you are going to find a government vehicle come out of its lane and take the opposite lane, all right? Even policemen do it, all right? And then before you know it, everybody toes that line and everybody begins to drive on that road. Because if government can do it, why not? It means it is right. And government does it, nobody imposes sanctions on government. So government gets away with it and government sets the pace, all right? Down the line, it is government that has introduced this culture of impunity. If government frowns at it, it won't take place. All right. So it is government that has instituted the culture of impunity, and if it's going to be called, it's going to be dealt with, government must be at the forefront. Because everywhere you look at it, it is government that would, at the last one, effect the law.
Okay.
All right. If there's a crime, it is the executive, by virtue of the to prosecute. And when they don't, because they are also involved in the act, the culture continues. And it is like it becomes a vicious circle, right? One act breeds another, and before you know it, it's accepted as a norm, all right? And people know in Nigeria right now, for instance, that you could virtually do anything and get away with it, all right? Depends on who you are and who you know, all right? And then you even hear people tell you, I will kill you and nothing will happen. I will shoot you and nothing will happen. And they mean it. Because it's a system where anything can happen. And nothing goes back in terms of a reprimand or a rebuke. So people just continue in this act. And then even to the masses, they take their refuse and dump it right on the road. Because he knows, if he's caught, the next thing he probably will just bring down and say, okay, I beg. I say, oh, now you, madam. And then he goes away. So the next day, of course, somebody else comes and dumps the same refuse. Because there's no reprimand, there's no sanction for it. So it goes on and on and on. And before you know it, it becomes a culture, which is where we find ourselves now.
Further you go, what are your thoughts in terms of the impacts of how this culture of impunity has affected our development as a people and as a society?
Well, again, thank you for having me. The problem we have had, it's the erosion of values, values that are important to societal development: equity and justice, and the enforcement of the same. Okay. Growing up as young persons and all that, we were raised to fear the police because we thought, they stood for certain things. They stood for values. They stood for enforcement of the laws. But as we have grown up, we have come to realize too that the police can be compromised. The judiciary can be compromised. And because we have all come to that realization that they can be compromised, so we tend to do whatever we want. And when we are allowed to do whatever we want, the society gravitates towards chaos and eventually anarchy. I don't know where we are now, but chaos is a setting. We have a system that is basically chaotic. Everything we do. And it affects our development in that we do not get the best out of us anymore. Okay. Let's look at another angle. Okay. People now feel free to forge certificates and are bold enough to present it before institutions, present it before the government, knowing that they are not going to verify. And then at the end of the day, you assume a position for which you are not qualified, you do not have competence, and what are you going to do? You jeopardize the opportunities of others, and in certain cases, you put the lives of others at risk, great risks, because you were not competent in the very first place. So that is what we have. What we have is a situation where people do not fear potential consequences
of their actions,
because it happens that you can almost get away with anything. If you can get away with anything and you believe that there are no consequences, you will do anything you want. It's the fear of the consequences. What a political philosopher, I think actually a psychologist, called the philosophic calculus. What you believe you will suffer for your actions determines what you will do. So if you believe you are not going to suffer any consequence, you will do whatever you want to do. And to add to what the pastor said depending on who you are and depending on who you know. Yeah. I will add something, and depending too on how much you have. Because if you have enough,
depends on who you are, who you know, and on how much you have.
Yes, because if you have a deep pocket, you can confidently do whatever you want. And you say when you go there, you pay your way out, you buy your way out. So we are actually at the mercy of the police, especially, and the judiciary. Those are the institutions, the bastions of equity and justice.
Okay.
That we hope will protect us. Yeah. And if they are not doing their job the way they are established to do, we all suffer.
Okay.
And what I will say this too, they too stand to suffer, but they look beyond that to not realize that they will suffer, if not directly, indirectly.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Boham, I want to get your take on a very significant aspect of our development, which is the issue of corruption. Some have said what has really festered the issue of corruption is this culture of impunity. What are your thoughts along those lines?
They are very correct, because the outcome of impunity to development and governance is corruption. There's mass corruption because there's impunity. Now, what are our laws to tame corruption? Because when there are no consequences, when there is an act, there is no consequence. It means, therefore, that there will be impunity. And also, if there is an act and there is consequence, and there is no implementation or enforcement of those consequences, there will also be what?
Impunity.
Yes, stronger impunity.
Impunities, okay.
Now, Nigeria is infested with corruption. I didn't know regulation. I didn't know consequences there. But these consequences are what I call state-based. It's only government that cannot enforce it against themselves. And when you ask a man to punish himself, you know what that could be. Now, take for instance, a cleric in Edo State has asked that Oshiomhole should be probed that he was infested with corruption in his governance.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, yes. He went to a state structure because corruption, anti-corruption measures are state-based. You will go to government to tell them, Lawowo, punish this, my brother, he's corrupt. You cannot on your own deploy those laws to enforce the law to curtail the consequences. That is one of the challenges, and that has broadened the space for impunity in the country. On the other hand, are there citizen-led legislation that can also be used to tame corruption? There are, but very few. We have the Freedom of Information Act, we have the Public Procurement Act, we have the Fiscal Responsibility Act, like the one that Edo has passed now, calling it Act to Regulate Government Spending.
Okay.
Yes, even though we have not gotten a copy of it. Now, most of the laws to tame corruption are state-based, only very few are citizen-driven. Citizens can actually use the FOI, Public Procurement Act, to actually check governance. Again, we have the Code of Conduct Tribunal Act, which regulates asset declaration. You declare your assets. If you are governor, tell us where your house is in Auchi, so that by the time you have another 10 close by, we will not ask, what's your salary and all that. We'll compare and contrast. This same law is a state-based law. If I don't like the asset that you have, I write to Code of Conduct Bureau, they will investigate. If they like the case, if they're interested, if the person is not political, is not highly placed, they will go for that. But if it's highly placed, they discard your case, even without returning to you, to write to you that, we have investigated, they won't call you back. That is where we are. So the major problem of impunity as it relates to corruption is that our legislation is state-based. We need to begin to advocate for citizen-led legislation. Let these laws be freely enforced by individuals. Let there be fiat. Anybody who needs to enforce it against anyone can easily access these laws to enforce it. That is where we are.
Pastor Collins, in your opinion, how has selective justice, as it were, helped to fester this culture of impunity, using the fight against corruption as a case study?
Okay. I had a discussion with a group of friends back in the US not too long ago. We were trying to analyze the Nigerian situation. How did we get to where we are? Because Nigeria is gradually becoming a place where you could say nothing works. All right, and we came to the conclusion that what appears to be Nigeria's foremost problem is law enforcement. Law enforcement. Any which way you look at it, lecturers don't teach anymore. They sell handouts. They tell students this handout will be 40% of your marks, and then the other 60%, you know how to arrange it. All right, students don't go to classes. I've found a couple of students who say that, you know, they had exams. They say, how are you in town? Oh no, I have paid for it. All right, and then even if you report that lecturer, there are chances that nothing will happen to him. All right, if you find somebody committing a crime, you will find 9 times out of 10 that that person will not be reprimanded. Look at what happened recently, which is about the NAS invasion, the invasion of NAS. Now, okay, the acting president at that time promptly sacked the DSS. But we thought he should go further than that. Who authorized that invasion? Who ordered the invasion? Why was it done? To what end? All right, people were responsible, because we heard behind the scenes that the man made some confessions and talked about the people who gave him the instruction. Because I don't imagine I could have just sat down and then asked his boys to invade the NAS. Now, if he did that, he did it because and you know the reason why that investigation needs to be carried out, you see, it portends danger for Nigeria. Because if you attack the National Assembly, which is the symbol of democracy, when there is no democracy, the judiciary exists, the executive exists, it's only the parliament that is taken away. So now when you attack the parliament, that's actually a coup against the nation. And people need to go further than just sacking the DGDSS. It is because things like this can happen. and nobody gets reprimanded. That's why we are gradually tilting towards, you know, a Somalia situation where anything can happen and nothing goes back in return in terms of reprimand or rebuke. So when we are going to begin to tackle the issue of impunity is when government itself will back off and begin to ensure that laws are enforced. When laws are there and are not enforced, it becomes a joke. All right? You know that there's a law against the matter. You go ahead and do it because you know nothing will happen. And indeed, nothing will happen. And we have come gradually to that situation right now where even before you, while you are contemplating the crime and while you are committing the crime, you know that you are likely, in fact, you are very, very, very likely to get away with the crime. And that's because government is behind it. And politically, this also has become a problem. All right? The parties impose candidates on the populace. Everybody knows that this was wrong. When the election comes, there is massive rigging. You know that this is not the result that has been announced now was not the natural outcome of that election. Everybody knows, but everybody keeps quiet, and that itself encourages impunity. All right, everybody now knows. You see, right now what we have is vote buying. All right, although we hear now that they are trying to make a law to criminalize it, okay, but it has become a culture. A friend of mine was saying the other day, you know what, I'm going to go for election, I'm not going to do any campaigns, I'm just keeping my money, I take it to the polling booths, I distribute my money and I win the election, which has become a culture. Yeah. It's against the law to buy votes, but who enforces it?
Do we even need extra law to be able to take care of that as a challenge?
We do not even need it. It's against it, it's an electoral law.
Yes.
But who enforces that law? It's a problem. You find it, during the last elections, I was at the polling station and I saw a particular group of people calling people and giving them money, and I called the attention of a policeman. You know what he told me? He said, you go and give them money too now. That's what the policeman told me. You go and give them money too. And he folded his hands, he was watching. Yeah. So of course, that became the order of the day at that police center. Yeah. Everybody was buying votes. All right? I was wondering, does this policeman even know that it's an offense to induce people to vote with money? And the policeman told me to my face, you also go and give them money. Okay. If you don't like what is going on. All right? And I looked at him, and of course, there was nothing I could do. We went further, that when votes were being collated, somebody came into the place, shot into the air, collected the ballot boxes and papers, with over 20 policemen at the polling center, and walked majestically into his car and drove away. After he left, the policeman said, where is he, where is he, where is he? He knew that he would do it and he would get away with it. All right? Because there were over 20 policemen at that polling center. Okay. On and on. If government is not backing these things, then it won't happen. Okay. So we need to get government to begin to work on this issue.
All right, Fred, what's your take on leadership? All right, leadership in terms of someone who is, you know what I mean by leadership. How would you assess the role leadership has played in this culture of impunity?
I will lay all my blames on the leadership for how we have gotten to where we are. It is the head that determines what happens to the tail. It's the head that determines what happens below. That is why we all go out there, fire on lines, to elect these leaders, because we want them to guide the system, we want them to direct the system, we want them to enforce the laws, we want them to live above the fray, lead by example. But when they are the ones themselves who flout the laws, what do you expect from those who follow? You see, that's the problem we have. And the problem is that the leaders get to where they are by default because of the culture of impunity. They get there by corruption. Like the pastor has rightly said, you go to a polling station and you see all these anomalies, and there are tens of policemen standing by and doing nothing. And you begin to wonder, why did the police come in the first place?
Yeah.
Because they are supposed to be there enforcing the law.
Yeah.
But apparently it's like they do not know what they are there for. Because if they knew what they were there for, there would be a number of arrests at every polling station. There are little things we can do that we don't even do as a society. If at the entrance of every polling station, you have a sign, no guns on these premises, or 20 years in jail or 30 years in jail, no exchange of cash, no inducement or any such law, 5 years in jail. Have that sign at the beginning.
As a reminder to those who are coming in.
For those coming into that premises.
Okay.
You have it all over the United States. Every public place, even restaurants, although they are private businesses, they are considered public places. Restaurants, hotels, bars, say no guns in these premises, no smoking here. If you do, you know that you are going to have to pay for the violations. Okay, so our leaders are the ones that are culpable in all of this. But the biggest of the impunity that we have all cried about and nothing has happened is the self-awarded or self-compensation that the members of the legislature, not just the legislature, they extended it to the executive and to the judiciary so that nobody kicks against it.
What's that?
Yes.
What's that?
Their compensation. Who employs an employee and tells the employee, fix your salaries, fix your emoluments, fix your bonuses and your fringe benefits? Who does that? Nobody. So why would the people that we elected be able to fix their salaries and be able to increase their salaries as they want? It is not done in any other society but in Nigeria. There should be guidelines. You cannot increase your salary over 5% or 3% in any two consecutive years.
So would you say the people are at the mercy of the legislature, so to speak?
Yes, they are mercy because, you see, what happened is this. In 1999, when the transition took place from military dictatorship to democracy, which we now have, a lot of people who were qualified were pessimistic about the sources of it, and so stayed away. So it gave room for those who were not qualified to hijack it. And since they hijacked it, it has been difficult to wrest it back from them. The people we have there are people who are just simply unscrupulous. They are not patriotic. I mean, you cannot say you are patriotic, then you are using one section of the nation to support yourself. You are using one religion to support yourself. When you do that, you are just a user. You are not patriotic. If you are truly patriotic, you should be concerned about the next generation, people who are going to succeed you. You should be concerned about every nook and corner of the nation, all groups in the nation.
Okay.
You know. Okay. And it's these same very leaders.
Okay. Let me come to Barrister Iboha. Still on the line of leadership and what leadership can bring on the table in terms of checkmating this culture of impunity. Would you agree that we saw a flicker of hope from the action taken by the Vice President, who was the acting president, in sacking DG DSS, ordering the reorganization, overhaul of SARS, as it were?
Yes, I agree totally. It was a challenge to impunity for a very long time. We have not seen that in action, even though we have seen that in vehement rhetorics. Now, beyond leadership, I do not believe that we need leadership for us to challenge impunity, culture of impunity. All we need is public citizen values. When you're on the aircraft, you hardly can see anyone who is making a call and 1 hour time will be coming, driver wait for me, because he knows the next person sitting by him is a decent public citizen, and he will rate him very low. But when you see them leave that environment, they enter into the atmosphere of agberoism, they begin to exhibit that character. So we need general public citizen values. The SAC, I don't want to comment on the SAC of DGSSS, but that of the FSAS reform, it is challenging that there was no value even by the police from the action of leadership. Leadership have said reform SARS, but you can see the action of the police, the setup of the FSAS itself. Don't forget, the SARS people who are wearing SARS are not happy that you want to wear uniform. You're in the police, you're not happy to go back and wear uniform. They're not happy. Now, the headship of the FSAS was in Edo. The CP was in Edo.
That's the new headship,
yes.
Okay, of SARS.
Yes, it was chased away, reported in Adamawa. Adamawa politely also asked him to exit, took him to a force headquarters, and now made him the head of a reform SARS. That is a poor value estimate. It means that whatever we have been doing, whatever we are not hearing, the command, the headquarters of Nigeria Police is not even hearing what the people are saying. You want to inform something, and you are bringing somebody who was chased away from different two commands. And that was strange. Now, as I said, public citizen value is very poor. You need more than leadership. The leadership has taken a decision, reform this thing. We have over, within Deputy Commissioner of Police and CP, we have over 300 sitting and standing. I think Commissioner of Police, over 300. You want to pick somebody. That is very strange. That is the kind of value that the headship of the Nigerian Police gave to the reform process. So beyond leadership, we need sense of value. We should come to a situation where even the public citizens have good remembrance memory. Somebody is sacked today. Next 2 years, he comes back, give you red carpet. That is the kind of nation that we are in. And because I know that you don't have good memory, I will always do whatever I want to do, come back, and I will expect your red carpet. We must get to a level where somebody who is coming say, this person 4 years ago, we had a problem. Why are you bringing him now? And I expected that when they convoked that meeting in Abuja, where they were doing the press briefing, somebody should have raised up and said, this man you are bringing to constitute the head now was actually a problem somewhere. And you want him to come and head what? You get the point. So we must have good public citizen memory and values. Beyond leadership, there's nothing much you can do in leadership if you don't have good sense of what? Public citizen value and memory. Now, return back to the sack of the DGSSS. Yeah. The Dara was sacked. Now we are not doing tribalism. The present one is on Bayelsa State. They're no longer using excellence as a criteria. And the leadership of former acting president, the current vice president, he was very proactive. He said the second in command, he didn't even know who the person was, should take over. You get the point? Yes. Now there is a lot of misfeelings in some quarters that Bayelsa man is not there and all that. That they will not be able to use him effectively to their details.
Maybe a kinsman to the former president.
Yes, which is very strange. Very strange. We ought not to bring in those primordial sentiments. Still back to value of leadership. Do you know that it takes you, if you are from the north, it takes you between 20 to 22 years for you to wear the rank of a CP in police?
20 to 22 years.
Yes. But if you are from the other part of the country, it may take you 32 years.
Is there any empirical evidence? Is this research?
Go and sample opinion. Go and sample opinion. Your own mates you enter with in the police force will be a CP. You are still a chief superintendent of police. The current IGP, it was enrolled the same time with the DCP in AIG in one of the division I want to mention. She's there. They were classmates. So now the value system means that we must be promoted on merit.
But the position of IGP is political. You know that.
No, before it becomes political, you must no longer get to DIG. Before they will not say, okay, it's now political. Or at was AIG. But where your mate left you from civil police, you are still there, already a DCP. Now they want to reform. Reform what? Who would they reform with? They reform with the kind of cabals, empty ethnic promotion cartel that is available. So it boils down to our value. Our value, we must promote excellence as against ethnicity. If we don't get to the baseline, we don't need laws. We don't need punishment. If I give you a contract to go and build a primary school diploma, you didn't build it, I don't even need to take you to court and sentence you and all that. There should be a local way of enforcing values. You begin to clear around the uncomputed beauty. You know what that means? You don't need a lawyer to go and rescue you. You clear around it. We begin to domesticate measures to be able to enforce values. By the time you know that you will be humiliated, you will clear around it for hours. You will not do it. I did a passport in Benin here. The person was able to call me to come and pick it up. He began to do Oga. I said, this is my passport, how far? He said, he was doing, I said, if I start now, you won't like it too. So I went to the place, they waited 2 days. I went to the head chief. I told the head chief, I don't want it to be sacked. That place is bushy. Let him go and clear it. Or I write to the necessary agency to probe him. That is my own application before you. I don't want it to be sacked. Let him go and clear that place. And it was there for 4 days.
Clear it?
Yes. People should be able to domesticate measures to instill value. And he will not do it again. By the time he takes your money to do your passport, he'll be the one calling you every time because he has suffered something. He didn't need to spend money for a lawyer.
Okay.
He didn't need to go and beg anybody. He didn't need who he is, who he knows, or what he has. Finance. He didn't need those 3 factors.
Yeah.
What we need to domesticate measures to instill values and discipline to complement leadership in the country.
If you just joined us, it's TMI Monday. Culture of impunity and the impact on governance and development is the thrust of our discussion. I summed it up this way, which is that the culture of impunity is festering based on who you are in the society, who you know, and then of course, how deep is your pocket. Pastor Collins, you raised that, and then of course, further you get added a third. How do you juxtapose the issue of culture of impunity and inability for elected officials to live up to their promises made? Is this also attributable to the culture of impunity?
Okay, you would realize or remember that on many occasions I've said on this platform that the characteristics of a kingdom derive from the king. So I'm very concerned about leadership. You recall, I don't know if you were born in 1983. You look like a young man.
I can't believe you just said that, Pastor Collins. Anyway, that's a matter for another day.
I don't know if you were born then. But if you recall, you remember that this same president that we have now was the one that came with this war against indiscipline, where people were now forced to queue, where people were forced to ensure that you didn't throw litters away, and that thing was enforced, and everybody began to maintain it because leadership insisted on it. Leadership insisted on it, and I wish we had followed through with that. All right, everywhere you go outside Nigeria, people stay on the queue regardless of who you are. All right, people stay on the queue. This is determined by leadership, and then it becomes a culture. If you jump a queue in the US or outside Nigeria and you go straight to the
front desk,
the desk,
yeah,
the person who you are talking to says to you, please go back, I'm attending to someone. That is regardless of who you are. Come with the face of Cameron or come with the face of Trump. They will not give you attention. They ask you to go back. It's a culture that's already been built and everybody maintains it. Now in Nigeria right now, it is governments as leadership that should take the lead, right? Because the government is also in the forefront of instituting impunity. And you know, okay, when we go back now, we talk about, in 2015, we had a lot of promises that made us to say, okay, perhaps we should give APC a chance because of all the promises that they had made, and they summed it up to say there was going to be change. All right, and they made so many promises. They will begin to feed school children. 1 naira will become $1. Petrol will become 14 naira, and on and on. Well, here we are right now. What is even my own amazement is that people are not even talking about those things. And we hear that the president intends to come back in 2019, and people are not asking him questions. What about the case of Leah Sharibu, this girl that was kidnapped in Dapchi, along with other girls? I mean, the other girls were released. We hear from the girls who came out that the Boko Haram refused to release that girl because she refused to renounce her religion. And up till now, as you and I speak, nothing has been done by government to effect her release. All right, is she being asked to pay the price for her religion? All right, now so we have at various levels the promises that government has made, and they are not effecting those promises. Nobody's asking them. A man who says he wants to come back, you told me you were going to make petrol 14 naira. Now petrol is 145. You told me there was no subsidy. Now we hear you are paying subsidy in trillions. All right, and yet you say, and we are paying 145 naira now per liter. You told me that 1 naira will become $1. Now $1 is 360 naira. You told me that you will be feeding school children. Where is that feeding going on? You told me that you will be giving unemployed 5,000 naira a month. Where is that going on now? And you want to come back in 2019. And nobody is asking those questions. And those are the things we need to focus on. Now, for instance, we have the national chairman of the APC who has taken it upon himself as an arm of government to insist that the Senate president must resign or must be removed. And the way he goes about it, he talks about it with so much force that you will think that, he's in a position of authority such that enables him to effect that threat. And he goes about and says it with so much gusto. And I'm wondering, since when did the national chairman of a party become an institution or become so powerful as to be able to say with confidence that the Senate president and arm of government must be removed? And if he does not have a backup, he will not speak like that. And he's telling, I even heard this morning that he's daring the Senate president to convoke the National Assembly, that they should come back and then see what will happen to him. I'm wondering, where is he getting that authority from? And nobody's calling him to order. I even hear that he was querying the minister and telling the minister he must go and constitute a board. And I'm wondering, where is he getting all this power from? The man at the top, who is the head of the government, who should call these people to order, and keeping quiet is the reason why this impunity persists. When you have a president who sees nothing, says nothing, does nothing, knows nothing, we're in trouble.
Okay, let me push you there, Pastor Collins. If you just join us, it's TMI Monday. Fred Igwe, how has our culture, our traditions, our customs, has it played any role in this whole debate around culture of impunity? Because someone said a while ago, you threw that somewhere that you know you shouldn't have, and then the enforcer sees you, probably apprehends you, and then realizes probably the landlord's son or the landlord's daughter or something like that, or the person kneels down and is begging. All of those sentiments come here. I don't know what you make of this.
Well, yes. I'm very glad he mentioned because it's something I had wanted to mention earlier about the
Senate leadership.
No, not the Senate leadership. The discarding of litters anywhere and everywhere.
Okay.
And what it was when Buhari first came to power as a military dictator, and all of that. If you remember then too, taxis were mandated to have trash bins inside their vehicles. Some had bags, some had buckets and all of that. Although that was not a sanitary situation that one would like. But it showed the extent to which the people were now beginning to want to comply. Okay? So it baffles me. You go around the entire country, okay? There are no trash bins anywhere. So if there are no trash bins, people have trash. They walk 2, 3 steps, 10 steps, 100 steps, nowhere to discard their trash. They drop it on the floor. But if you have trash bins on the streets, like they have in the advanced countries, you go to the place, you drop it, and then they pick it up. It's such an easy thing to do. But why is it that we are so myopic we cannot even see that? And then we travel abroad every day, and we see these things, and we cannot even copy something as mundane as that. Okay. So we come back to
culture, customs, tradition.
I will come to that, but I want to speak again to the emoluments that is self-awarded by our elected officials. Okay. That is extrajudicial fraud. When you come and then you just award these huge sums of money. Do you know it's the relationship between the minimum wage and what some of our elected officials receive is 1,500, 1,600? to 1, and you go to the same market to buy tomatoes, you expect them to train their children to the same school, and you expect them to take the same, to provide some kind of public transport, and then to take care of themselves. They pay them 1, or you give them 1%, and then you get 1,500 of that. It does not make sense. Salaries and emoluments are graduated in every society, and they stay within 1:30 ratio, 1:30. That of minimum wage in the United States and that of the president is ratio 1. It was ratio 1 to 27, but it's now down to about a ratio 1 to 20. In Australia, it's about ratio 1 to 14. Here we have ratio 1 to 1,500. And that is because it was self-awarded.
Yeah.
So that is extrajudicial robbery. And in better clients, they ought to be prosecuted for that. Now, talking about our culture, what impact our culture has. Yes, you know, we have our traditions, we respect our elders, for one. Then family members, the closeness of our families and all of that. So when people begin to do this, it is when people begin to violate the laws of the land, it is quite often that they come and they'll get family members, extended family members
to intervene on their behalf,
or even colleagues, classmates and all that, you know, associations, and we all come, and especially since we all meet every weekend
somewhere, somehow
at an Owambe party. You didn't know this man, this person that has that case. You know, they plan it.
Yeah.
Okay, this person is going to be at this party. Please, can you be there? If you'll be there, you know. So, yes, it has a whole lot of, but it all goes back to our personal values. Okay. Yeah. If you have that understanding that in compromising standards, you are indirectly affected, then you will not compromise it. Because if I allow, for example, now we have a hospital that has been constructed. How many years it has been purportedly commissioned, but it's not functioning.
It's lying fallow.
It's lying fallow. Then you know that a whole lot of things went wrong. There was compromise in the integrity of the construction, which we hear is the actual reason why it has not been launched, why it is not functioning. That the doctors and the nurses, everybody is afraid to move into the place because everybody is aware of the fault, of the engineering faults of the building, rather than everything else we hear. So if they had not compromised, and if those who compromised did not think they could get away with it, then we will not be in the situation where we are now, where we have a structure on which billions of naira would have been spent, but it's not functioning. If the money to develop that particular facility had been borrowed as private investors do, by now all their properties would have been sold. All their collaterals that they tender to the bank would have been sold.
To recoup the money?
To recoup the money. Because of the risk they would have taken. But for the government has not taken risk. You didn't use your money, you used the public funds, and then you are just sitting back. You are not even telling the people why we are in the situation we are. It is lamentable that you go into a public hospital. That's our flagship health and medical facility there in the state. You go right around it to see what it was supposed to replace. And it rains in every ward. It rains through the ceiling, through the roof and through the ceiling, in every ward, on the patients. It's a shame.
Okay.
Let me say this.
Yeah.
We have our leaders who travel out every day and they come back. But it's a simple measure. When we cannot find any of them with the boldness to invite the people they go to visit to come
and visit their country.
Because when they've come to visit, what they are hoping is that by the time they get to the hotel, they will like the place. When they come to government house, they will like it. But if we are not blind, because they are going to go through streets to get there, and they are going to see the filth of your society. So I tell people, when we now start seeing Americans sending their children, it used to happen. Oh, they will send their children to Nigeria to school. Or one that is already here says, I can go into your hospital without fear that my situation will get worse. Then we know that we are doing good. Okay. Until it comes to that situation.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Agboha, I just want to get rounding up now. What's your take on how we can drastically and aggressively reduce this culture of impunity that is taking its toll on our national life?
Yes. Breaking it down, what we just need is love and self-satisfaction. Love in the sense that you are entering into your own streets. Your neighbor is doing a party and it blocks your place with canopy. You can't drive. You can't drive into your own street. It blocks everywhere. It's not a government. It doesn't involve money. It's impunity. Because it knows that you can sort out yourself. Just one, the other you revise, you park behind the party and check to your house. Yes, it doesn't care. We must love our neighbor as much as also we love ourselves. If there's love, there will be value. You don't need to pollute anywhere. When you know that when you pollute the environment, that next person can fall ill. You try to make the place very neat. And lastly, self-satisfaction. You see someone who has just finished eating rice in his house. He goes to a party, maybe a buffet, and you see the way he's loaded the food. You can imagine if that person is giving license to enter the government. That is just how he will do it. You know, there's no self-satisfaction. You have 2 cars, when you are appointed, they give you 1, and they say time you are hustling, you want to buy the 4th one. So add to that contract somewhere. I need to buy one Prado. You have 2 before you came to government. You have another 1. You have a back. Greed. There's no self-satisfaction. And it is not just for the elite. See somebody who go with 15 naira and go to Nigeria bet, he want to win 10 million. That is, it starts from there. He says, I want to win 10 million, I want gamble. And this gambling is multiplying itself in the country, and people don't even know that it has an effect on the values of the citizens. Because you don't know that I do with 15 naira, you want to win 10 million. Is that not greed? You're not a government. You are designing those who are in government. But we must have self-satisfaction. We don't need big grammar. We don't need legislation. We don't need argument. Just simple. Love your neighbor as much as you love yourself. Be self-satisfied. At every point in time, be self-satisfied. You know that even those who secure loan to develop the state or the country, want to build this, want to build that, as you are securing the loan, the person who writes the proposal will write his own bill. You get the point? The person who's going to raise the check will discuss with the World Bank that you are taking 5, or please, I put it in the paper that is 8. World Bank will say, what concerns me? I'm not seeing it. You discover that all these things, if you go to check papers, how much did you award it? We are not complaining about the loan now. How much did you award the loan? This is the percent. What is in paper is different. The sitting commissioner or whatever is there will add his own. The person with the bill to write the proposal will also add his own. And this proposal has templates that you write in. The World Bank have templates to that proposal. They have for you to chip in whatever you want to chip in. They will say somebody wrote it, 10%. They will squander it. They will borrow money for our children to pay. They will also add their own. They will squander it. No implementation. So the impunity is on different strata. It is not. You are complaining that you are borrowing loan. That's not enough. You added percent to World Bank loan. Nobody is saying anything. You brought the consultant. Like you said, this consulting what? The criteria are there. Have this legislation in place. Have this structure. Have this. We'll give you loan. If Kaduna can approach World Bank, the states are approaching. You say you have consultant to do it and all that. You pay that person huge sum of money. Is it not supposed to be a voluntary service? Because you want to go and borrow. Everybody should sympathize with the borrower. And then the borrower to arrange his documents to get it. Now, the borrower now has the effrontery to tell you that he has a consultant. The borrower has the effrontery to even increase the digits or the percentage. So, the impunity, elitists, up to the grassroots. The grassroots man who 15 naira, want to go and gamble, want to go and play in Nigeria, want to go and play. It starts from there. If you guys go counselor now, you'll be thinking of how you can auction a Volvo car that he made for 50,000 and buy it by himself. Because it starts from there.
Yeah.
So we must begin to enshrine this value of self-satisfaction. Be so satisfied with what you have. Then 25 years thinking of having a car, say, I don't just have a car and I'm not happy. In 25 years, in those days our parents didn't have. You sure we trekked to school, we didn't see anything wrong with it. But this day, 22, 23, we want to go and eat something in Ghana. It's looking for your people to swallow, to make money. And we're not saying anything about it. So we are talking about the elitists alone, even up to the lower cadre. We must begin to see, love your neighbor. Just love your neighbor. No much religion.
Okay.
Love your neighbor.
Let me just get this follow-up question to you, because I know a while ago you mentioned some institutions of governance.
Yes.
You talked about the EFCC Act. You talked about the ICPC Act. You talked about the Freedom of Information and several of these acts. What is wrong with them currently that is, in your opinion, influencing this culture of impunity in our society?
Yeah, like I highlighted earlier, these legislations are majorly state-led.
Okay.
The government pay these people to interpret those laws. And that therefore means that government will also tell them when to move and when to sit. And when you want to use these laws against persons who have been in government, who are currently in government, you are impaired. And I started an instance that a cleric in Edo State wants the former governor to be interrogated and maybe prosecuted. They have not even invited him, let alone prosecute him. They have not even looked at documents he brought. He had to rush to court to ask us to compel them to do the needful. That is where we are. These structures are all state-led. You get the point? They are noise-making legislations. They cannot easily be enforced by you and I. We need to beg them. We need to go at them. We need to prod them. We need to kneel before the legislations and before those who are surrounding it to be able to put them in place. Therefore, that means that at our local level, we must begin to domesticate measures to put these people in check. That if you're given a contract, it didn't do it, there's nothing wrong for you to come and start clearing around it. You don't have to take it to court. You don't need to pay another lawyer. You don't need to have money. We'll track you down, ask you to be clearing it, or ask your grandmother to sleep outside. By the time you know that nobody is kidnapping your parents, but they are being punished. A time will even come in this country where even those elites who are borrowed for our children to pay, they send their children abroad. When our children see them abroad, they will hold them in Nitro Airport, slap them. You know, say your parent, your father, because you have passport, I have passport. My own parents also brought me here.
But the child is innocent.
No. There is a way to enforce these things. Our laws are not working. If it doesn't work, there are ways these children will also.
You're commanding on democratic. As it were.
It was the child there, was my son there when they took loan. Now he's going to be paying. If you go to Akwa Ibom Airport, you will pay 1.5 to fly. If you have bought a ticket, they will say there's a notice there, 1.5 to fly. Yes, for loan, for using the facility for loan that has been secured by the former governor. Was I the one? Was the man in that state? Am I represented there? It is strange. So if that will come, other states will also demystify means to be collecting this loan because they will be choked. So I want children will react because they will ask their parents, I didn't know anything about it. Even the loan, they increase it the digit. The president of the World Bank said they increase it. They had consultant. And you were in the country with all your knowledge. I didn't have any input. He said, okay, we will see. I know where. You know, these children, they meet themselves there. Most of these stealing parents don't even know that you are not closing any gap. The gap is not much now. Everywhere is online. You can practically will know that this son lives in Florida, that one lives in Chicago, this one lives there, this one lives there. And they can actually be assessed and beaten up. So you should steal with common sense and begin to think that this impunity is not just going to, it's not going to outlive you. You cannot stop it. If you cannot be your own way, try to see how we can make this now. It may outrun your generation.
We're not recommending on this program that the children of those who have stolen money should be beaten up, because whether you like it or not, those children may also be victims of the same society that we live in. I mean, there's no way a child would know probably the father has stolen money to do some of the things that he's doing. But I want to get a final word on that. Okay. Yes, you're not recommending that. Children of those who are...
We're not recommending it,
but you're saying that
it could get to that level. If we don't by now sit up and begin to know that impunity has its consequence beyond legislation.
Okay, Pastor Collins, Barrister, what are your final thoughts?
Okay, if we're going to have to deal with impunity, as I said, the characteristics of a kingdom derive from the king. The king of any kingdom in the state is the state governor, at the local government level is the local government chairman, at the federal level is the president, will need to begin to enforce laws But we have a problem where it is the king himself that is being accused of impunity or thievery. Now, a mention was made now of the 5-star hospital, all right, and that 5-star hospital, while it was being constructed, we had a situation where the building collapsed, all right. Now, another contractor was brought in, more money was deployed into the construction, the project, and up to now, after 5-star hospital has been finally completed, with the president coming to commission the 5-star hospital. One of the things I wonder about, why does Buhari still go to London to go for treatment when he commissioned a 5-star modern, they call it 5-star ultra modern hospital? Why does he still go to London? Is that not they are bringing
self-indictment?
It's self-indictment.
Yes.
You came to commission a 5-star ultra modern hospital, and you go to London, so that you are having a laugh on us. We are supposed to know that it was a joke, because even right now as I speak, the only patients that are being treated in that hospital are rodents and scorpions and lizards. Are the only patients being treated after a colossal sum has been deployed to that project. The man is still alive. We deployed 30 billion for a water storm project. Now, you cannot walk the streets of Benin when rain falls. The idea of that water storm project was that water will be collected at a particular spot, will be deployed to a particular spot when it rains, that within minutes or hours, the whole street will be dry. But what you have now, this is now when water is picking in Benin. After 30 billion,
point of correction, 38 billion. 38
billion was spent as a water storm project. And the man is walking the streets. Nobody's saying anything. Okay, but there is evidence a clergyman has gone to court, asking the court to compel the EFCC to probe and investigate that man. Nobody's doing anything. Now, what does that do? Does that give incentive for impunity, or does that de-incentivize people? Now, that action alone is giving incentive to people that you can do anything. A man who has collected 30 billion, a man who collected so much money from that for that so-called 5-star or Chamboda hospital, and is walking the street, he's even been elevated to the position of a national chairman of a party, and nothing is done. A person has compiled evidence. So these are not hearsay. He has compiled evidence. He has gone to court. He has sworn affidavit. I can swear that this fact that I am bringing, I have vowed to them. I swear by them that it is the truth and nothing but the truth. And presented it to the court.
You don't have evidence to back that up, okay?
He has evidence.
No, you. I'm talking about you.
Now, I know about it.
Yes.
How do you know I don't know about it? I know about all the evidence.
Okay, let's not. Let's stay on course here.
How to deal with it.
Yeah.
Now, if such a man, what we're looking at is now this is a man who a citizen has gone to court with evidence, asking the court to compel an investigative body to investigate this man, because as we know, you have to go through the states. So he has gone to court. What more do you need? I am coming to say that this man is a thief. That's what I'm saying. And if you doubt me, probe, look at the evidence I'm producing. Investigate this evidence and find out whether it is true or false. Now, when you refuse to do something about that, the next man is looking for his own way of getting his 30 billion. Of getting his own 30 billion. Because you see, this money is 30 billion. It's my money. I'm going to pay for it. I will pay for it. If after I finish paying, my children will pay for it. The money with which that 5-star modern hospital that Buhari is not visiting, the money with which it was built, is our money. All right, and somebody did that thing, and it's working free. And we are having a situation where we celebrate mediocrity, we denigrate excellence. That's what we have. A situation where the people who exhibit conduct that is worthy of emulation and worthy of applause, they are denigrated. The ones who exhibit conduct that is worthy of condemnation, we elevate them. So for as long as that happens, impunity will continue.
Okay.
So we need to have the government being the custodian of the collective sovereignty of the people,
Okay.
has to champion this run against impunity.
Okay.
Otherwise, it will be, as I said now, a vicious circle,
Okay.
which we have right now and which will continue in government.
Now, Fred, the last word from you.
Yes. The problem is when we confront all those who complain about the system and regard them as enemies, then we do not have any plans to move forward. We must learn to accommodate and actually embrace complaints by the public.
Okay.
Because that's what is going to help you to improve your system. We do have a system that is very lacking in checks and balances. And if we have, like he was suggesting, like the barrister was suggesting, just beyond having institutional enforcement of our laws and order,
Yeah.
to having private citizens' participation, then like the consumer advocates and all of that, then we will begin to make progress. What we are suffering is the very poverty of the system. The generality of Nigerians are poor, so they do not have that extra time or extra resources to support any kind of public endeavor to control the excesses of our public officials, civil or elected. Whereas abroad, you have a lot of people who make donations to such organizations, consumer advocate organizations, or some other
NGOs, civil society organizations. Yeah.
If they are well supported, and then they don't depend on government support, because many of them here in Nigeria depend on government support. So then they cannot do what they are at variance. You support the government, you are collecting money from the government to control the government. How is that going to work? If you get money independently, then where the government refuses to control their own excesses, then you can now go to court
and challenge them.
All
right, thank
you. And be able to fund it.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. That's not so much time we have with us. We have time to look into the culture of impunity because it's such a very big issue. I would say we barely scratched the surface today on the show, but it's something that we'll look at some other time on the show. Big thanks to Pastor Collins Okonofa, Pastor Presta Agboha, many thanks for coming, and Fred Yuga, many thanks for coming.